Well, how fun is this going to be? Finally, at least for a solo appearance, I've got Elaine MacDonald on the Leaders Who Care series. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark. It's so great to chat with you here.
Yeah, we're gonna have a good time as well as maybe we'll even, inform and educate other people at the same time. Who knows? But we'll learn from each other, which actually always
Yeah.
do. So that'll be super valuable. And as I always say, let's do a brief intro. Not all the business and any stuff like that, but where are you now? Where are you from? Family? Um, I love asking people to talk about something that they've never told anybody before in their life and see what they come up with or something like that. But share a little bit about you.
Yeah. Let's see. I am here dialing in or zooming in from Los Altos, California, from Northern California. I've lived here for about 25 years or so. I'm not a native Californian. I actually was born and raised in New York. And spent most of my time in the East Coast, but I really love being out here in California. I
Me
have,
too.
yeah, it's great. I have three daughters, and a dog. Who's also female. So the house, my poor husband, the house is always filled with female energy. Let's just say.
Poor guy. Um, and you have how many dogs or a dog?
Just one. There's been a lot of pleading for two, but I think that's about as much as I can handle.
We always had one, but when we got two, it always seemed better. And then at one point I had my three sons, two Dobermans, two miniature pinchers, and a bird all in one house. And it was hectic, but it was created a lot of memories, I'll tell you that.
That's true. A lot of laughter and a lot of memories. That's true. I do tell the kids once they all are out of the house, which is soon, that's when I'll consider getting more dogs as replacement for kids. Not at the same time.
Well, there's pros and cons. They're pretty, the dogs they are our best friend. There's no doubt about that. And what about your family? Where's your family from originally?
Yeah. So originally my parents were Chinese immigrants. So I was born in Queens, New York. So that they came from southern China and came when they were probably in their teens, in the Chinese-Japanese War, left China to make a new life in the US. So this was in the 50s.
Wow, good for them.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, just in some ways a typical sort of immigrant story. Came here with nothing, didn't know a word of English, worked their way up, started a business, and then the kids really benefited from that, especially me.
Yeah, we should never undervalue what those all those parents did, and because it was hard, and their exercise was actually for the most part. It's funny we have this conversation every so often. Their exercise was doing things all the time.
Right,
You
right.
know,
Being on the go. Right. The
yeah.
concept of making a date to do something on a machine was just kind of unheard of in a gym.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, they were just exercising all the time, going to work, to this, that, whatever, and cooking and whatnot. So good for them. Well, they did good with this daughter. It seems so. So we're talking about they came as teens. What were you like a kid or a teenager? Were you the Barbie girl or the tomboy or a combination? Were you video games? Were you sports, music? What was it?
Yeah, I think probably not surprisingly, as a child of immigrants, I started off as the academic nerdy kind of kid, focused on the academics because that was like the focus of the way to salvation and success in the US in the in the traditional sort of Asian household. But then, so definitely not the Barbie, definitely not the tomboy. Probably though, I think I probably got more into my own sort of skin teenager. I started doing things that I really personally enjoyed, which was really doing, I just like being active and exploring a lot of different issues. So whether it's writing in the newspaper, costume set design, life sciences, community service, I just Loved every except joining any sports team. So athletics is that was one thing I just never touched with the 10-foot pole, and that hasn't changed, unfortunately. So yeah, the whole exercise bit isn't, or yeah, getting out there isn't something that I ever kind of, yeah, learn to love.
Well, I mean, not breaking news, but you're pretty good exercise walking on the beach.
I know, that's right. I
So
know, with that resistance with the sand and then the water, just, that's pretty darn good.
I thought it was good for sure.
And walking my
So
dog too, that also,
that is one advantage of a dog also is you're forced to walk. Um,
yes.
so that is a good one too. Well, tell us about, starting with education. What intrigued you about history and science? That was your original degree, and then after you went to get your MBA at Harvard. But what was the thinking there?
Yeah, I mean, originally, because I was interested in so many different things, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to pursue sort of a sciencey path. So I was really interested in life sciences and biological sciences. But I also had this liberal art creative side of me. I loved journalism. I loved writing. And so history and science felt like this great way of not making a decision of choosing one path or another. Um, but but I really ended up loving that major. It's really the study of the history of science because it really kind of combines an interdisciplinary sort of way, learning about a new field that just didn't exist before. And today, like interdisciplinary studies are so common, right? That everybody's doing a cross section of something with something else, and a science and a humanities component. At the time, though, way back then, when I was in college, it was unusual, and it was just fun to kind of connect the dots, and that's something that I always love to do: connect new dots that didn't formally get connected before. The impact of industrialization, on feminism, the impact of Darwinism on China, just looking at different issues with a new lens. So that's what I really loved about history and science.
Well, it's interesting because I don't think we spend enough time learning from history in a lot of different aspects, but it's also an interesting education to find out where things are derived from and how they
Mm.
come to stuff. So I could see how that could play a part in why you were intrigued by that, going that direction. And I guess then the MBA was for business purposes, if you will.
Yeah, I worked as a strategy consultant at a management consulting firm after college, and I loved that perspective. I wanted to also explore a career change, and so then I went back to get an MBA and did marketing after that. So yeah, it was just really I ran a catering business in college, and that's when I knew I wanted to go into into business in some fashion, but just looking at it from different lenses.
That's cool. I did not know that. That was a fact that I did
Yeah.
not know. That Joanna Catering was this very cool.
And a bartender. It was a catering and bartending business. So
Oh, nice. All right. Well,
yeah.
entrepreneurship. There you go. Um, we that gives me a good segue because we founded Fifth Element Group on the premise that leaders in their businesses, their organizations can always do better when they're doing good. Um, you clearly were an early leader in understanding that. And I think as you put it to me once in understanding that harnessing the talents of the private sector for social good, which I can definitely relate to. And share with us if and how you learned from and capitalized on your initial time in the corporate world.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, back in those days, I didn't originally go into business thinking I wanted to take it to social impact. It was a very sort of straightforward. It was the corporate world, period. And so, as I mentioned, I started off in consulting, working globally, working in some developing countries like India, like Indonesia, China at the time, which was the first time it just really opened my eyes to some of the immense opportunities and the challenges of working in developing nations, and just really seeing how much potential there would be there. And I just loved consulting too, just having that sort of framework to look at the holistic picture of drivers of moving companies. So that was really an incredible pivotal experience working in Asia, and really thinking about working with a lot of different companies and thinking about strategically how do they think about scaling. And then after business school, I spent about 10 years doing brand management for a consumer packaged goods company. And I love that because then I got to, instead of just giving, from the outsider advice to companies, actually being in a large corporation and seeing what it takes to make something happen. So much more challenging. There's so much richness into that, working with people, working with different functions and making something happen. So I really loved that aspect, as well as just always imprinted on me this looking at the end user in mind. Like, you're not making a product for the product's sake. You gotta, at a consumer
Right.
packaged goods company, brand management, and thinking about who ultimately is the customer and who ultimately is using the product and what do they really care about, starting with what they need and want first and working backwards. And so that so that was really helpful. And then, like, again, this sounds cliche. I had got married, had kids, and there's something about that pivotal moment when you start raising children that you look at the world a little differently and the type of
Absolutely.
world that they're coming into, right? Yeah. So that's the start of when I started thinking about social impact a little bit more, and the inequities, whether it's in education and access to opportunities. And so I did what, I knew what to do, and I started doing some pro bono consulting to nonprofits, to education institutions. And that's when I fell in love. That's when I realized, gosh, these challenges that people are dealing with are so much more complex, in my perspective, right, than in the corporate world. I was getting kind of bored of, like, fighting for market share, or just, it's the same old, how do you get to market quickly, commercialize, how do you increase margins? And when you deal with a social, I'll borrow your term, Mark, that you introduced me to, for a social profit, whether they're a nonprofit or a for-profit, but a social profit organization, the metrics for success is so much richer, right? It's not just the financials, it's the impact on people's lives.
Yeah.
And so I've kind of just realized this is a much more exciting space to be in. And in so many ways, what I've done in the corporate side for so many years can really be leveraged in the social profit side, because no matter what organization you are, you care about funding, diversifying revenue, building awareness, executing a product or service well. It doesn't matter, whether it's a widget or whether it's a service for
Right.
people in need. So that's where I said, I'm going to take my skills and I'm going to apply it there. That's where I think it's most interesting and where I could be of help.
Well, when they tell us that your life's going to change when you have kids, they were not kidding in many respects, because it's true, and it did. But you're right. It's natural. All of a sudden, you have this miracle that just got born, and so it is a whole different perspective, in a great way. Um, I remember when I did a lot of work with some big companies, including Burger King, world headquarters in Miami, and once a year at least they took all their corporate staff out, and it wasn't called a retreat. It was called a let's remember why we're doing what we're doing type of thing. And it was get them to thinking, I'm not in the accounting business, the marketing business, the supply chain business, whatever they did business. We're in the business of nourishing people.
Mm-mm.
To your point about what do they care about, what they need. And I also liked your comparison of the consulting versus the corporate. And we all want to be on a team and win the championship with the team, rather than necessarily telling somebody what to do, and but
Right.
you're part of it, but you're not part of it. And I hear that, a lot. You talked a little bit how you were influenced, your vision was influenced, and whatnot, but what about your corporate, the knowledge and relationships? You talked a little bit about it there. Expand a little bit on the knowledge and relationships you got from corporate, and how that you took that forward.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, the people and the skills that I picked up, whether it's looking and analyzing a challenge that a startup or organization is facing, to what does it take to really make something happen, the execution piece, which is just as important as the strategy. You can get the strategy right, but like nothing happens if it's not executed well. It's really about being able to inspire and motivate people, being able to understand what are the key drivers, what brings out innovative thinking, what brings out teamwork, as you said, and collaboration. How do you bring out the best in people? That's certainly something that I learned through that corporate experience, and kind of I'd say our key lessons going forward is the importance of collaboration and the human elements, right? Of making something happen, right?
Yeah, and the relationships, I tell my kids all the time, I mean, that's probably the most valuable thing ever, is having those relationships, real relationships, not just I'm connected to relationships, right? Did you find, I mean, when you were building relationships then, I think we understood they were important, but maybe we didn't understand that they were really important later on. So it was almost well, let, uh, you know, really, I guess it would be easy if I could talk English, right? Was it foundational for you, um, in a sense, leading to the opportunities that then you ended up being in, like, HBS,
Yeah.
community, kin, etc. And now talk a little bit about what you're doing with SB2, but
Yeah. Absolutely, and HBS is all founded about the importance of relationships and connections, and there's students and graduates all know that oftentimes it's not what you learn in the classroom, but it's the people that you meet, and the friendships and the relationships. And sometimes people think of networking as in a way that thinks of the word negatively. I certainly don't, and it has to be defined in the right way. It's not networking for the sake of just clicking on a contact or something like that, but it's really kind of, I have found time and time again, when you meet somebody, even somebody who seems so different from you, um, if once you get down and talk with them about something that they care about, and oftentimes it could be a social issue that they care about, something that really touches them, you see the life that comes from that, and you find new ways to bond and connect to people, and those relationships and those things that you learn. I all the time, I love this role of being a connector, of connecting people from different conversations I've had, different times and periods in my life, from different career aspects, and going, there's somebody I know who I think can help, or is working on the exact same thing, or can help you in this particular issue. Let's bring that together. And that's just, it could be a pivotal introduction, right? Or connection that really changes the course of somebody's, company or personal life.
well, my favorite question, I never liked the question when you meet people of what do you do? I thought that was so boring. And so everybody asking that, and especially men, the first thing they would answer is, well, I'm the VP of this. And it's like, that's what you're all defined. And it's not their fault. That's how they've been almost educated to do. But, you talked about how you were dedicated to get people off the bench.
Yeah.
And, you know, going back to the question that I love, which is, by the way, the first question in the whole non-flict workshop that you hear me talk about a lot is, what's important to you? Um, can you talk about your dedication and what you mean by getting people off the bench, and maybe share some experiences you've had with the organizations you've worked with that really you're proud of and were really exciting or informative to the audience, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what I've learned so often is that people have positive intentions, and there's so much misunderstanding, right? People are in their different silos, and somebody's in business, and somebody's working, say, at a nonprofit, and the people in the nonprofit side, may think, gosh, the people in business don't understand, and they're just out there to make money. And then the flip side is, gosh, the people in the nonprofit side maybe don't know how to run something, or there's all these like stereotypes.
Right.
And then maybe kind of connecting the dots again, that sort of coming back to that, what I loved in college and studying history and science, is like, how do I bring these two worlds together? And so for a while, one of the things I did, as you pointed out, I ran a program called HBS Community Partners, which was really focused on getting Harvard Business School alumni to use their business management skills for social good, and really helping them, whether they were working full time or not, lending a little bit of time to support social profit organizations with some of the challenges that they may be facing. And while those engagements, whether they're brainstorming sessions or consulting projects, may seem as if it was the alumni in the business world, quote unquote, helping those in the social profit sector, invariably it's a two-way exchange. And the feedback I get talking to a lot of the business school graduates is, oh my goodness, like this is just experiencing this has changed my life. I'm now engaged. I've joined the board, or I've joined the organization, or I'm now championing what they're doing. And it's just really pivotal in opening up their eyes and just understanding different sectors, and vice versa. I just love getting feedback from the social profits going, gosh, I'll tell you the truth. I thought I would first meet a bunch of arrogant folks who would just tell me what to do. And I was shocked at how empathetic, sympathetic, how they really wanted to help solve the issue. Um, like seeing those dots connect, people, dots meaning, people in different, not to be extreme, different worlds, but just with different,
Yeah,
focusing on different issues, really kind of come together and together create great solutions. I always describe it as I love working with bright minds with big hearts. And so,
right.
finding, and I feel like there's so much potential there, and there's so many people who want to help and they just don't know how. And that's what HBS Community Partners did. And then, most recently at Knowledge Impact Network, or KIN, which is the spirit with which we treat our global family.
And I
You
always loved that you were involved in changing that, by the way,
know,
because kin is what that is, right? This is brilliant.
Yeah, Kin is about our global family, right? It's how do we then take leaders around the world, whether you're C-suite executives, government leaders, academic leaders, public sector, private sector, nonprofit leaders, and bring them together to really harness their skills or insights or connections, right, for social good? How do you bring them together collaboratively to work on some of the world's most pressing issues? And so um, Kin was just a fabulous sort of next step of say, for me, and sort of taking that movement of finding bright minds with big hearts and really sharing that on a global level.
It's the epitome of you made the heart, even you let the heart explode, because because they have purpose, they're doing something that's meaningful, and they're doing it with a team, because teams, and obviously teams win championships, but players love to be on a team that is making something happen, even more so than doing it themselves, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing. So I would say bright minds with big hearts getting even bigger, maybe because of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you were saying, as a parent, as you know, your heart only grows. No matter how many kids you have,
Right.
it's not a limited pie, and it's the same way. There is so much knowledge out there, right? And so many people with positive intentions. And how do we think of knowledge as an asset, right? As a capital form? There's financial assets, but there's knowledge assets as well. And think of knowledge as a sustainable asset, if you will, because you can recycle it, you can repurpose it, redistribute it for social good. And it's a gift that keeps on giving. You don't lose it when you give it, right? It's just it is expansive, right? And so if we really thought of it, just as we are thinking about no longer using plastic water bottles, if we think about, okay, how do I take this knowledge and how do I give it and use it, and distribute it in ways that can be really helpful. I think it's a new way of thinking that I'm really excited about.
And competitors, and I've been talking a lot about this recently too, competitors can play together for the betterment. I talk about leagues, and you've got teams in a league and they're competing for the championship, but the league has to be great for the championship to be worth something.
Yeah.
Coke and Pepsi and Dr. Pepper right now are working on bottles together that's better
Mm.
for the world. So competitors can work together for the
Yes.
betterment. of everything in that respect. And knowledge, I like sustainable knowledge, especially in a time when people are getting older, but there's all types of technology now to retain their knowledge too,
Mhm.
right? And so it might be the most valuable asset we have.
Absolutely. I mean, there's finances are finite,
Right.
but knowledge can be infinite if we can think about how we can use what we have and share it. How much more quickly can we really accelerate solutions if we thought of right that it's not a competition. It's really a way to collaborate to kind of push innovation further.
Yeah, and a lot of the projects you've worked on, um, I think were in a way where you're helping people, like you said, that don't know how to do it, but you're also helping situations where may even be marginalized people or whatnot, that once they get a tidbit or a taste of that knowledge, as someone once said, who knows how many Einsteins are in all those people, and that creates that unlocks knowledge and
Mhm.
that they have. So it's a tremendous asset that I think we're still underusing, obviously,
Yeah.
to a great degree. Tell us a little bit then about Silicon Valley social venture partners.
Yeah, yeah. So again, in this theme of just loving to kind of integrate private sector talents, SV2 is what we call Silicon Valley Social Venture Partners. It's a organization based in the Bay Area. It's part of the Social Venture Partners Network, which is really focused on unleashing the talents and resources of Silicon Valley for social good, which basically means it's a group of individuals who want to not only pool their financial resources, so we pool dollars to grant to nonprofits in the area, but we also pool dollars to give to do impact investing, right, for social entrepreneurs that are coming up with incredible solutions to address issues such as climate change. But basically pooling the financial resources and then pooling also the knowledge resources. So there's always a beyond the dollar aspect of supporting the grantees or the investees. It's a learning community. It's focused on the community educating each other, and it's also a community of learn by doing. So everybody gets engaged in researching the organization, sharing their trends, getting out in the field, and also learning about specific sectors. So
That's all.
it's a fabulous community, and it dovetails really nicely with basically what you pointed out is the issue area that I really care about, which is about getting people off the bench, getting the private sector to kind of find ways to take that kind of talent and apply it in new ways.
No, it's brilliant. I did want to ask you because we've done a lot of work with women. I mean, we were launched on International Women's Day as a firm, etc. Um, but describe briefly, your journey as a woman, Asian heritage, in a world that's not always super friendly or has been super friendly or equal and all that, we know, but it's getting better, but we know, but how did you feel during all that? How did you navigate through it all and thrive through it?
Yeah, it's an ongoing, as you know, it's an ongoing challenge, and women I think today has progressed a lot since when I first started off working. But for sure, as a female and as a Chinese American woman, I definitely felt the barriers. Working in Asia, for instance, it was um, commonplace, right, for people to assume that I was the assistant that they would give the faxes to, right, in a meeting room with a bunch of men, because I would be the one female in the room. So that would be the general assumption. And so there were definitely things I had to do to overcompensate, moving forward first, to greet people, making sure I'm standing in the front of the line, especially in the Asian cultures, in terms of who sits with who or who walks with who, like what position you're in makes a lot of difference. um Here's something I haven't told anybody.
Cool.
Started working as a consultant. I changed my voice. I put on a deeper voice whenever I answered the phone. when I introduced myself, because, having a friendly young, female voice wasn't really conducive, working and advising, Fortune 500 type company leaders. So I purposely put on my deeper voice. Um, most recently, I am actually very interested in getting more engaged in helping Asian American women succeed in the marketplace. There's data that shows that all the different um, uh, populations out there, Asian American women are the most disadvantaged in getting promoting to senior levels than any other type of demographic. So behind African American women, behind Asian men, Asian American women specifically face the greatest barriers, the greatest glass ceiling in really rising to C-suite positions. And again, a lot of it has to do with cultural biases, or just
Right.
even unconscious bias, I would say, in terms of how people talk to Asian women. And I feel fortunate to be at a stage in life now where I can maybe advocate for that to be different.
No, it's great, and I can appreciate you have to think about, or had to think about all these things, because I had some great female bosses, especially when I was at Deloitte and where I saw some of the prejudice and everything, and it was absolutely ridiculous. And you had so many things to think about, even stand in the right place in line and all that. So had to be a little bit. It gets to be a little exhausting, probably frustrating, I'm sure. To go through all that.
Yeah, and just having to be creative. I mean, when I was raising kids, having to figure out, how do I do this on a part-time basis? How do I do this on a job share basis? How do I operate my own independent, firm for a little while until I, got to the point where I can go back full time. And so it definitely required additional creativity, and it is harder. And I was fortunate to be able to figure that out, but that so many people can and have to make very clear trade-offs, right, between career and family, which is still, as I mentioned, it's an ongoing challenge.
Yeah, I had a boss who was a senior manager, going to be partner at Deloitte, that had to go through that, and Deloitte's way better now than it was then in that era. But yeah, it was, and even as a business decision, the firm didn't make the right decision because she wanted to have both, and so on. So yeah, it's luckily the world's changed to some degree. But also, we were speaking of knowledge. What you're talking about doing with young Asian women is better for community in the world, because the knowledge that's going to come out of those women is going to be spectacular. It just will. It will. Or at least discovered, whereas it might not have been discovered, otherwise. So, um, last couple of things. The fourth industrial revolution has pretty well been defined as technology, mostly AI now, but VR, AR, and all that. But the fifth is described as humanity, and and there's the whole thing about well, we look at it. We have what's the interaction between impact and talent? Where does technology fit into that? Can you just share your thoughts on, with everything going on with AI and how it's moving faster than no one can stop it? Is it for good? Is it for bad? Where is it going? What's your just thoughts on the whole scenario?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball per se. I don't think anybody does on the future of AI. I definitely, more whether, thinking about it, whether it's for good or for bad, I feel like is kind of a more of an academic exercise. At the end of the day, we should be leveraging it, because the exchange of knowledge, and I'm glad you raised this, because one can think of the sharing of knowledge that well, once with AI, what's the value in doing the work that I'm doing, and back to what you and I talked about the importance of connections and network. Like, no matter what AI brings in terms of improving the speed and efficiency of exchanging certain types of knowledge and data, for sure, which is going to absolutely transform the speed in which we can actually create solutions. You
Mhm.
can't replace, I believe, certainly not in my lifetime, the human intelligence and the human connections that are required, right? That network, back to the at the end of the day, things happen because of people, and people helping other people, and choosing to say, you know what, I met somebody and know somebody who can help you in this country break through that red tape, or I know a supply chain expert who can help you figure out how to address this challenge in reaching in delivering food, in an area that has just been flooded or with an earthquake. That type of connection and bonding, it's just so critical. I mean, time and time again, I've just seen it's the human piece. And I talked about this too when I worked at a consumer packaged goods company. It's the execution. It's people working together. It's being inspired. It's thinking creatively. It's making those contacts that ultimately make something happen. The data alone isn't sufficient to solve the issues. And so I think AI is going to be incredible, an incredible positive force. Um, but it's not going to solve every issue in the world on its own.
Yeah, and I think it's like we talked about this recently, formerly known as soft skills. It's the HI, the high skills, the human intelligence skills, with the real people skills, and that could be actually super exciting for community in general to focus on. It goes back to the big heart, to people to focus on the real human skills, the human intelligence skills, which includes the emotional skills, includes the caring skills, it includes the big heart that motivates people to really have good lives and good friends and all that. So
Mhm.
if it's done that way, as you're talking about, it could be spectacular.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a full believer that the high skills, the human intelligence skills being the most important trait really, right, for the
Yeah.
next decade or so to really hone in on, develop, to excel at picking up on those cues. Um AI can help us go pretty far, but yeah, that extra bit, that human intelligence is pretty important.
It's what leaders who care have, right?
Absolutely.
So last thing I wanted to ask you, a client told me this in 2021. He said, Mark, the 2020, that year was the year that flew by slowly. And I've always remembered him saying that because it's true. And we sometimes we look back and it feels like 2020 was yesterday, and
Mhm.
otherwise it feels like it's years ago. And it's hard to believe we're in 2024 already. But with all that that's happened, what are you most grateful for, and what are you most hopeful for?
Um, this kind of it does kind of tie into what we were talking about. I think I'm most grateful for, especially during those pandemic years, of being a part of a number of different communities, that human connection piece, right? When you're so isolated, being able to have different circles, whether it's a family circle, whether it's a friends from school circle, whether it's friends and interest books, in different issues,
Right.
areas, different times of life. Um, Having lots of different circles to kind of lean on and to be with, like it just felt this need, as I'm sure everybody did, to want to come in closer, right, and be a part of that circle. And I definitely felt um for those that might have been isolated, right, who didn't have family, who didn't have work or outside interests and so forth, that with COVID, the physical isolation was magnified, right? Versus others who were able to lean on their circles and be able to have stay afloat. So I'm just really grateful for having a lot of different pods and
Sure.
circles, and I feel strongly the importance of having, as you pointed out, whether they're teams or circles or groups, just people who identify and care about each other in different ways. I'm really grateful for that. What I look forward to, I'd say, just in keeping with this conversation, there's a lot of talk about AI, right? But getting to the other end of that, of saying, okay, this is where, back to like, this is where the human aspect, right? This is where like bringing together communities can really help. um Seeing that, right, the AI isn't the end all be all, that it together, AI plus the human communities and the circles together, working to share their knowledge, their connection, their spirit, their
Yeah.
support. That, like, together, I think that could be really powerful.
Yeah, no, well said. And I think it's something we should make sure that even our youngest of kids get that also. Um, and not get just caught up in the AI so much that they're missing they're missing that part. But I'm just super grateful that you're a friend and you're a leader who cares. And with people like you, what's not to be hopeful for, right? I mean, there's good stuff ahead. So thanks for sharing all this and being on the series. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for championing leaders who care. That's such an important role to do that. It's critical. At the end of the day, it's leaders who care who really make a difference in the world. So thank you for championing that.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.